Hello, Alabama fans, and welcome to the BamaOnLine Recruiting Show. I'm Tim Watts, the BamaOnLine publisher, and with me is Andrew Bone extraordinaire. He's our hat fashion man, but he's also our recruiting editor. Been doing this a long time. He's a little bit older than me, but we're both happy to have you guys here. Haven't did a recruiting only show in a minute, Andrew, but what we've got is a happy place. We've got our portal window out is closed, so you can only add if you want to. You can't lose anybody else. And then tomorrow is the end of the NFL draft, so that closes a couple of big windows. Not that we believe Alabama has anybody left to go in the draft, because hey, when you want to talk good news, portal recruiting and all that, the good news really starts with who had a chance to go pro but decided to stay, right?
Yeah, that's right. And those are the big wins for Alabama this offseason. Being able to get guys back on your team next year, guys that would, could have gone off to the NFL, guys who, could have easily gone somewhere else, potentially for some more money, for some more NIL money, but chose to stay. And those are the guys that you invest in and reinvest in and continue to try to build. I think Alabama should be really excited about what they were been able to do this off season. Everybody looks at the numbers: 23 out, 7 in. You know, why didn't they had 16 more guys here? They didn't need to. They didn't have to. They have 80 total players on your team on the team right now, heading into the spring. And we talked about this before, Tim. You could potentially have some of those guys that are walk-ons that earn scholarship offers. You can continue to still look in the portal. Is there a big difference between having 85 scholarship players and 80 scholarship players right now? Not really. I think they could still add some more down the road. But if you're Alabama and you're an Alabama fan, you should feel really good about where your roster is heading into spring.
Yeah, and people talk about is Bama broke, the NIL and all of that. Of course not. I mean, these guys, when you have guys that are highly sought after, and again, I think it's not as simple as does Damani go pro or does Damani stay at Alabama? Because that's a guy that could hit the portal. And we see that at other schools. We see guys expected back who could hit. So that's a win to get that guy. LT Overton, if you brought those guys in from the portal from another school, you'd be losing your mind about it. And that's kind of how you got to look at it with guys like that. And that's NIL money that keeps guys here like that. I mean, Ryan Williams had NIL offers. Xavier Brown, we can start with those. That's two guys with massive NIL offers. But um, the relief factor of the relief factor of having that portal window closed, Andrew, scale 1 to 10, where are you at?
It's good that it's gone. I'm glad that the portal window has closed. You can kind of focus more on your team. What's coming back. What to expect going into the spring practice and stuff like that. But as far as you go through the entire season, you're like, all right, what's going to happen at the end of the recruiting cycle? Then once the recruiting cycle ends, what's going to happen during the transfer portal? We had that kind of week. We had I think it was December the 3rd through the 5th. There was the early signing period. And you're like, okay, we're finally through it. And then you get to the next week and it's like, open season for the portal. And it's just, everybody was expecting this mad craziness as we see kind of every single year. And there's a lot of names that enter the portal, and there's players on your team that are going to enter the portal. But as far as it just being over the top crazy, I didn't think it was that way this year.
Yeah, and we appreciate everybody joining us live today a little bit after 9:30 Central Time. Joining in the show. We appreciate it. If you get a chance, give us a like, get us a subscription. We appreciate y'all being here. And again, Andrew, I agree with you. That portal window after last year had me a little on edge because it lasted half the year, it felt like. So to hear that thing close, pretty excited. Let's talk about some of the guys Alabama was able to bring in. Probably not as sexy as the group as you thought, or that some wanted. I mean, I think that's just human nature, right? You want to bring in everybody's a 5-star, everybody's this, but the portal's to fill needs. And I felt like Alabama did that, in a lot of positive ways. And let's start with Isaiah Horton.
Yeah, I mean, you get a guy that's had close to 700 yards receiving during his sophomore year, redshirt sophomore year down at Miami, second on the team in catches for the Hurricanes, and a very pass happy offense with Cam Ward, Heisman finalist, and now you get a 6'4", over 200-pound wide receiver, something that you don't really have on your team right now. You got some really great players coming back, and Ryan Williams, Jerm, and some of these other guys like Jalen Hill recovering from injury, Cole Adams, Bach moving over to a wide receiver, and Rico Scott. But man, you add a playmaker of that caliber to your team at the position. I mean, you got to feel really excited about this receiver room, which might be one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country next year.
I feel like they kind of flipped it. I feel like it was a totally different when they walked in. I mean, there was no Ryan Williams committed when they walked in. Jeremy hadn't transferred when they walked in. Of course, Jeremy and Ryan were soon to follow, but you add those guys, and again, I agree with you. Horton, ideal guy with Ryan and with Jeremy out in the field. Plus, he's an experienced guy. You've got young guys. Derek Meadows looks like $1 billion physically. Ler Brooks, we all love. Bach is a tremendous athlete. I still feel like people have forgotten how great of an athlete he is, and I think at some point he's going to have a chance to show it. But also, how about Big Cam? Big Cam Dewberry, a very experienced inside linebacker, inside offensive lineman.
Great footwork. Moves really well laterally. I think that with Cam Dewberry, this is a guy that you wanted to bring in, a guy that's got a lot of experience playing on the interior, has played at the SEC level, has started before. He's going to come in and provide some immediate competition, especially at that left guard position, which is vacated by Tyler Booker. Alabama's got some young guys that are itching to start to compete. Guys like Casey Poe, Joe Ionata could potentially move over to left guard. You got Ola Salinen. It's going to be an absolute battle that we may not know the answer to as far as who's going to be the starter until the fall. But this is a guy that can certainly add some more experience and depth at that position. And Alabama was really excited to get him on board.
Yeah, and I think you get a guy that has 34 games experience, I believe. It also gives you some flexibility with a guy like Michael Carroll. If he, maybe kicks outside at a tackle position. I think they've got 5 now. They got the Ball State kid that came in as a developmental guy, but you get a little bit more options by bringing in a guy like that. And I'll tell you one guy, I think the most surprising room to me, right now, based on what we expected 3 months ago, is the inside linebacker room. You're expecting Deontay Lawson back. You get a gift in Jefferson coming back. And you also get Nikhil Hill-Green, who is an all-conference player, has the film to back it up, a legit guy that comes in. Now we went from possibly no really experienced inside backers, Jihad's also leaving, to 3, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, going into December, I imagine Alabama probably, they were probably in some dire straits right there. They were probably looking, who all is gonna enter the transfer portal that we can potentially go after and try to land. Expecting Lawson to be gone, expecting Jefferson to be gone, and then you get those 2 guys back. Now Lawson's coming back off an injury, so getting Hill-Green from Colorado, a guy that. One of the most interesting, stories that I heard during the last month from Hill-Green was Alabama had actually pursued him during the spring transfer portal window last year, but he knew that Lawson and Jihad Campbell were coming back to Alabama's team, so he decided to go to Colorado, go somewhere that he could start, and all Big 12 performer. At Colorado, now he's got an opportunity to come in and potentially make a big impact at Alabama. So good to get him. That linebacker room still, in my opinion, still probably a little thin. You've got some experience there at the top, but who's going to be that 4th, 5th guy? I think Caden Jones is a guy that could come in and not come in, but could come in and play a bigger role this year. Because he got some experience this past year as a freshman. I think Alabama's really excited about him.
You've also almost got an inside linebacker sandwich with no meat. You got, the top group of seniors is A+, They love the young guys they brought in. We don't talk about Abdul Sanders enough, Luke Metz, Duke Johnson, all those guys in early and bowl practice. And then in the middle, all you've got is Caden right now. So I understand it. But also, I think you look at every team as a one-year team, right? I mean, next year you lose 3 seniors inside linebacker. You're going to be an attractive place for an inside linebacker who's in the portal. And let's be honest, there are going to be plenty of guys in the portal. Let's switch. And again, thanks for all your comments. We appreciate all you guys jumping in the show. We know it's kind of spur of the moment. But we appreciate everybody, guys and gals, that jump in here and participate. Bob, good to see you. A regular. Hello, Steve. Roll Tide to you as well. Andrew, let's switch gears a little bit to the freshmen on campus, because now 17 or 18, maybe 19 are going to be on there early. We know Caleb Edwards, Chuck McDonald will be later. Both of them played in the Navy game this week and did well. I mean, you saw, and again, how big does Caleb Edwards look? Like, even lined up at H-back, that's not a guy you really got to search his number, because he's a monster of a recruit.
Yeah, that's right. And, this is a guy that's, pretty quiet. And Chuck, not as quiet. Chuck will talk to you, but Caleb was a guy that, was really quiet throughout the entire process, and, didn't really say a lot. It took his visits, committed, just kind of, shut things down after that. Didn't do any interviews, and then goes out to San Antonio to compete in the Navy game, which used to be the Army game. I know some people might be confused by that, but
so confusing.
Now it's the Navy game. But yeah, I mean, he had a great week over in San Antonio. So I know Alabama is excited, but he's not going to be there until later on. They did sign another tight end, and Marshall Pritchett, but Marshall Pritchett just had clavicle surgery, so he's going to be out for a little bit this spring. So,
and he broke that in the All-Star game very early. Me and Andrew, Joseph, we're all excited to get a look at him. We think he's a sleeper in the class. Broke it sometime early in the game, right?
Yep, second play of the game. He didn't even realize he had broken it, and then went over to the sideline. And unfortunate for him. Now he's expected to be back for the spring, but probably not going to be at 100%. So, but there's a great group of freshmen that are going to be on campus, that are already on campus, as you mentioned. That offensive line group. I mean, that picture that Coach Cap posted the other night, having dinner at his house, having all the steaks, and having the new guys, minus Cam Dewberry. Cam Dewberry, some people noticed that he was not in the picture, but Cam is on campus. He just wasn't at the dinner on Sunday night, but those steaks were absolutely massive. The potatoes were big. But, man, Michael Carroll standing next to Cap and Mal Waldrop and those guys, man, he isn't – he's listed at 6'6.5". He looks like he's 6'8.5". He's just absolutely massive, very physically impressive. And that's a guy that I think we're all going to be watching really closely heading into the spring and during the spring practice. What's he going to look like? What positions they're going to play him at? Could he potentially play right tackle? Does he move inside to guard? I think they're going to move him around, because I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
Yeah, I just think he's a guy coming to play. And, I think that this offensive line, again, improving the room, more competition. I know Pritchett went to Nebraska. I feel like it's kind of Formby and whoever else can step in's job to lose. Very interesting career for Pritchett, you know what I mean? And said NIL wasn't, we were told NIL is what he said wasn't the reason. Ended up at Nebraska, state he's very familiar with. He's not, I'm just kidding. But we'll have a chance to start. They've been active. And that's how crazy the portal is. I mean, you have guys that are split time or backup offensive tackles. It's so hard to find them that you're seeing the value of those guys. It's almost like the NFL signing guys like that. So very interested, because they've got a lot of money invested in their quarterback at Nebraska. So obviously the portal went round and round in many ways. I personally didn't find it as destructive as others did, because of the freshmen coming in that we expect to play. You mentioned Michael, but I mean, there's Jackson Lloyd, who the leaps and bounds Jackson has made from, again, this is a guy that would be playing basketball right now and then hitting in the batting cage, getting ready for baseball season. So football be the last thing on his mind to some degree. And now he's 100% football. Kind of amazing how different he looks. He looked great as a junior, but as a senior, he kind of looked like that NFL body, we wanted to see.
Yeah, I'm excited about Jackson Lloyd as well. A guy that was the very first offensive player offered by Coach DeBoer and Courtney Morgan in the 25 class. It's crazy because he was the first offensive player. Dejon Lee was the first defensive player, both offered by Alabama last January, and they were able to sign both of those guys. So Jackson Lloyd, though, incredible athlete. Like you said, 6'7", 295 pounds. That's going to be a guy that has a lot of athleticism, getting onto the field. But is he going to be a guy that can come in and compete and push for playing time right away, or does he need a year for development? We'll kind of wait and see. But I think potentially, working with guys like Formby, Caden Proctor, that's going to be really beneficial for him over the course of the next year or so.
Yeah, I agree. And then you look at guys, we saw a bunch of them. Another one I'm pretty excited about is Ivan Taylor, because you only sign one safety. You got to kind of feel like you're okay with the room you've got, but you're also very confident in this guy. And now he jumps out and does some bowl practices, and he's the first name we hear out of that group who is standing out. And you watch him, he's longer than he looks bigger, longer, especially when you see a picture of him that he does on film.
Yeah, and I love that mentality that he had. We saw that video the other day that was posted about him setting up his bed on the actual floor, like it's training camp. Something that he picked up from his father, Ike Taylor, who was Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's focused. He's ready to get going, and that was such a big win for Alabama on the recruiting trail, getting him late in the process after he'd committed to Notre Dame, then he flipped to Michigan, and then ends up at Alabama. So good job by Alabama not giving up on that end, because I certainly felt like they needed to add another safety, or at least one safety in this class, and they got a guy that they considered one of the very best in the country. This is a guy that they heavily targeted since last spring. Now they get him on campus, and he seems ready to go.
The one thing about the Alabama staff when it comes to recruiting that I really like about them is they have their type. Whatever that type is, they stick with it. They weren't out here when they had no safeties commitments. We weren't seeing a bunch of safety offers, right? You weren't seeing 5 or 6 safeties offered, committed to other schools or anything else. They had a type. They knew what they wanted. They went in and they got them. Another position I'm pretty interested in, because we know, Lawson's going to be out through the spring. I'm not sure how much they'll give Jefferson and Hillgreen, but I'm interested in seeing these young Caden Jones, obviously not a recruit coming in. You mentioned him earlier, but Luke and Abdul Sanders, Luke Metz and Abdul Sanders, especially at that inside linebacker position in the spring.
Yeah, and these guys are two guys who come from great high school football programs. They're already pretty thick, pretty big. Luke Metz, 6'3", 225 pounds. Abdul Sanders, 6'1.5", 220 pounds. I'm really intrigued about Duke Johnson, because this is a guy that played on both sides of the ball. Throughout his high school career, was a running back, linebacker. Once he kind of focuses in on just one position, adds some more weight, kind of how does he develop over the course of this next year? I think, as far as size-wise, maybe being ready to compete maybe a little bit earlier, Metz and Sanders are probably the guys, just because of, they've got the bodies right now that can go in and make potentially an early impact, at least on special teams. But Duke Johnson, with his speed, that's a guy that we're going to be monitoring very closely this spring and heading into the fall to kind of see, what his development looks like.
They're big. They look like they're physically ready to contribute. Obviously the spring, when you get to the spring challenges that we want to see, the people competing in spring, obviously Keelan's up there at the top, but, a couple defensive linemen, Kelby Collins is always obviously coming in from the portal, but Kavante Henry and Steve, Big Steve from Canada, who's basically a freshman, since the junior college season didn't come in, but physically, two very, very impressive looking guys, and also mentally a little bit more mature than your average, 18-year-old. They do have a few more years under their belt.
Yeah, with Steve, we're really excited that he's finally on campus. We've been talking about him for the last couple of years. From Quebec, which he originally from Cameroon. So and I think that this is a guy that got a lot of potential. I mean, 6'4", 200, maybe a little bit taller than that, 295 pounds. As you mentioned, is going to have he's not going to just have 2 years in Tuscaloosa, as we've kind of seen with junior college players in the past. You always kind of worry, all right, they're going to have 1, maybe 2 years. Well, now you have, now you got 4 years potentially with Steve in Tuscaloosa. So excited to kind of see how he's going to transition from the junior college ranks over to Alabama. And then with Kavante Henry, I think the biggest question for us heading into the spring is which position is he going to play? Is he going to be a bandit? Or is he going to be a wolf? I mean, he's 6'4", 245, 250 pounds right now. I think he could play either one. But I think we'll probably most likely see him at bandit. Is that kind of how you're thinking?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of position flexibility there. I'm wondering how big he ends up when we get around to August. I mean, very well could be that hybrid coming in, getting that rush, but also in that bandit. The thing I love, I mean, what's funny, and I love the fans, and it's not out. Every fan base we're all a little insane, right? I mean, fan is short for fanatic, and I love it, and I'm one of them. I know you're one of them as well, but the reaction to Bama had no defensive linemen, and they needed to hit the portal. And because Alabama wasn't really recruiting anybody in the portal, right? They were after Kelby. But then the domino of Overton and Keenan came back, and they were screaming it's one of the best groups in there. It's almost like the Alabama staff knew they were coming back, right?
I think they had a pretty good feeling what their current roster was going to look like, and heading into the spring. They just needed to know or needed to figure out if there was somebody else that was out there that they needed to potentially go after. But Alabama can't necessarily worry about and it sucks to say because everybody's going to have probably their own opinion on this, but you got to focus on your team for this upcoming year. You can't really focus on it next year or the year after. Besides high school recruiting, you've got to focus on what's going to make your team better in 2025. You got to go after those players. You got to keep those players on your team. And if there's players on your team that aren't going to help you next season and they're getting NIL offers or they want to start or they want to, you know what? Good luck to you. Go somewhere else. Go try to, get a bag. Go, go potentially play and start somewhere else. But Alabama, as we saw this cycle, they focused on their team that they've got, the guys that are on their roster that they wanted to bring back that can make a big difference on their team. And then, sign as good of a high school class as you can. And they signed the number 2 recruiting class in the country. And that, we removed Ty Haywood from the commitment list yesterday. And guess where Alabama is still ranked in the final team rankings from the 2025 class?
Yep, number 2.
So
who
got a damn good high school class. They have a damn good roster. So people should be a little bit more excited than, we didn't sign enough players at this position or that position. They got a damn good roster heading into the fall, and there's going to be a lot of high expectations. What's going to happen at the quarterback position? That's probably going to be the biggest, I guess the biggest question for all of us.
Yeah, and of course, who are you more excited? I think this is a tougher question. I think we're quickly going to answer the one we're most familiar with. But who are you more excited to see, Derek Meadows or Ler Brooks? Because polar opposites physically, both of them have tremendous traits, speed, all that stuff. But one is 6'6", one's 5'10 and a half, 2 different players. I think I'm equally excited to see them both because Meadows is kind of like the blind date we got set up on, and we were married, a week later. Alabama heavily involved, got their guy with Caleb Cunningham. They had 2 wide receivers they wanted. Caleb Cunningham decommits. Alabama circles back and gets Meadows from LSU. So 2 completely talented guys, and I personally think Meadows is underappreciated in the rankings.
Yeah, we saw him in the state championship game out in
we did.
Nevada. I mean, he had over 100 yards receiving in state title game. A lot of people talk about, he didn't have these gaudy stats like a like a lot, Ler Brooks had broke the New Jersey career receiving yards record. But man, this is a unique player who's he's, like I said, 6'6", over 200 pounds. He can run. It's different than what Alabama has recruited in the past. So, really intrigued about him. I do think I wouldn't say he's a developmental guy, but I do think he's a guy that, might need a year in the system to kind of figure things out. But man, Ler Brooks is one of the most explosive players in the country. And Alabama's got some speed. They got Jalen Mbakwe. They got Ryan Williams. They got Bernard. I mean, they've got some explosive playmakers. They got some good guys that are, as far as speed guys, that are returning kicks, returning punts. But man, if I'm Alabama, I am putting Brooks, in the return game immediately and letting him go to work. I mean, he's one of the fastest players in the country. I saw somebody had it. He had clocked 23.5 miles per hour, 22.5
really
miles
fast.
per hour. So fastest one in the country they had clocked all season. So excited about both of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Meadows is a guy you can find certain plays for. I think he's a more natural wide receiver. He's similar to Caleb Odom, but I think he's more of a natural wide receiver than Caleb was. I think Caleb's going to be a good tight end if he settles down there. I think he's going to be productive at a wide receiver position if he doesn't. But I think Meadows kind of falls in that. I can tell you this, the spring game this year is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. You have a quarterback battle. Don't feel like you really had one in a while. You got a lot of freshmen. You got the transfer portal guys coming in, and you get repeats of a lot of the guys who probably won't get that much playing time in the spring. I mean, you don't really need to see a lot from Damani, but you want to see Calhoun, the transfer portal guy from Utah. So an exciting game from Alabama fans.
I think this is the first time going into the spring that you're not saying you weren't excited about it, but the defense is going to be really damn good going into the spring, going into the fall, because you got a lot of guys returning. They're going to be a lot more comfortable in the system. That took a little bit of getting used to, but man, over the course of the back end of the season, they really came together. One of the best units in college football. I think they finished inside the top 10 in total defense. Scoring defense and, top 10 in a lot of different categories, but it's going to be one of the best defenses in college football. I'm really excited about getting most of those guys back on the team this year. And you kind of go into the spring thinking it's a side of the ball that you're not really too concerned about. But as long as you kind of develop a few guys, you're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, you get some leadership back too. I mean, that's important. I mean, Damani was a leader, played injured this year. Tim Keenan's an emotional guy. Yurt Lawson is definitely a guy in the locker room, no matter what, that people listen to. So you got a lot of experience back. Let's bring in Joseph Hastings, our partner in crime. That's the third of the trio. Joseph, welcome to the show. I know you've been listening backstage. Kind of just recapped everything we've been through this year. You've been through that part. Getting into what's coming. I mean, this schedule sucks. Like whoever put all this schedule together for the year was drunk. Go home, you're drunk, because we had it open up last week on Monday and goes through this past week. And then it's closed the 13th, 14th, and 15th. They have a coaching convention. Then it opens back up. You got head coaches can see 25 and 26s, which is absurd already to be doing that. You got the portal going on. The portal's not shut for some of these schools. The school's still playing. You just got so much crap to deal with.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and then also with the All-Star game schedule too. You all talked about Marshall Pritchett, his injury, and you're starting to see a lot of 2025s, go leave that game and not participate. Michael Carroll, A.K. Deere, opted not to go to the Under Armour game, and that's why they're mixing the 2026s in there too, which is at an interesting time because you're just coming off the hype of signing the 2025s. Fans are excited about them, want to see what they do. And there's not necessarily as much for 2026 as there will be in the coming months. And then you have the Navy game, which takes place after some kids have already arrived on campus. Like Jackson Lloyd was supposed to participate in that game, but Bama's enrollment date was January 6th. That was their arrival date. Classes start the 8th. The game for the Navy game was January 11th. The recruiting schedule, the All-Star game schedule, the coaching visits, all of it's just out of whack. It's a pretty crazy time right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you get invited to that game in April or March or June, you're excited to play. But man, when December rolls, rolls around, you go through an entire high school season. Jackson's ran Lloyd. A lot of these guys were deep in the playoffs. Then you can go to, hey, I want to go to Tuscaloosa. A lot of these guys had a handful go to the actual bowl game and practice. I mean, it's not really hard to figure out. You're excited to get to that campus, I would think. So, but I do agree, adding those 26s, which I wasn't sure they would do that, really gave the chance a game. You know, there might be a point where it's just a junior game at some point. Me and Andrew remember back in the day, before you were born probably, they used to have game. We used to have the Alabama-Mississippi game in the summer, Andrew, didn't we?
Yeah. That's how Wallace Woodbury, that's how he got an offer from Alabama. He shined at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game.
True story. Yeah, it's true story.
2 months before fall practice started. So
crazy.
It's starting to get like the Pro Bowl now, pretty much, where it's for the honor. Obviously, Jackson did get to do the jersey presentation. They get to go out to their schools, gives them some good recognition. But in terms of actually participating in the game itself, I don't know if there's as many benefits as there was before. Maybe it goes to like a skills challenge, so you don't see injuries like Marshall Pritchett and others have suffered over the past few years. So I'm interested.
Hey, let's not forget, like, we haven't really touched on this. I think we're scared to talk about it, but Keelan looked nasty when he went down. His leg was bent under him. The thing that kind of stands out to me, because we've loved Keelan since, he was a 3-star committed to SMU, and some people were questioning it, but dude was trying to get back in the game. Like, his face never exhibited he had anything wrong. When he was on the sideline and they went to look at his ankle, he just took the shoe off. He didn't even untie it. I was like, man, that would literally, if I snatched my shoe off, it would sprain my ankle.
Well, I know we have other signings and players to talk about, and Keelan's someone we've talked about a lot. But Tim, you remember that game? I forgot which one it was earlier this season, in Keelan's senior season, where he took a big hit and
body blow.
I was texting his dad. I was like, "Hey, is everything okay?" He's like, "Yep, he's just fine." So I know a lot of people talk about his frame, 6'4", 185 pounds. He's definitely going to have to put on some weight for sure, but he's taken some hits in the All-Star game setting and against some top guys in Texas, and he gets right back up every time.
All right, Andrew, let's go to the 2026 class, because I know, the jokes all year was, does Alabama recruit the state of Alabama and all that stuff? Does Kalen DeBoer? That was the first stop. They come out of the gate, seeing an Alabama commitment, spent the whole week in the state for the most part. Some weather caught them on Friday. In Alabama, it snowed, and we weren't able to, a lot of the schools were closed. But let's talk a little bit about Kalen DeBoer, how visible he was, and the assistants that were roaming the streets with him.
Yeah, so I think, you look back to last year when Coach DeBoer and that staff, the staff went out on the recruiting trail. They were introducing themselves for the first time to everyone, to recruits, to coaches, to faculty, to people in the community. They weren't having to necessarily do that this year, because they knew a lot of these guys. They've been recruiting them. They've seen them. They've been to these high schools. They know the lay of the land by now, and they weren't able to do that last year. So they were behind immediately this time last January, and now they're ahead. So how are you going to be able to, go into this recruiting cycle and make people change the perception on the in-state recruiting? Because after only signing 2 in-state recruits, it didn't look great. Now, you still signed the number 2 recruiting class in the country, but people still want you to sign the best players in the state of Alabama. And there's some really good ones this year. They've already got one commitment in Zion Gibson out of Gaston City, who they, as you mentioned, they went and saw him, the very first guy, last Tuesday. But they also saw some other big names in the state, including Anthony Jones down in Mobile. They went and saw Hezekiah Harris, who's committed to Auburn, another edge rusher. So they were really active in the state of Alabama last week, and we also saw some new offers.
Gunnar Rivers, Philip Rivers, one of his 10 children. Wikipedia that 10 children for my dude.
I thought it was
complete. I don't know if you can have more legally. I think They put you in jail if you pass the double digits. You know, if you get 10, he had 7 daughters, 3 sons. Obviously, Gunner, big time 2027 recruit's going to have a lot of offers. He saw him. But again, Joseph, full court press on a guy committed the first day out. They didn't just see Zion Gibson. They went full throttle and went back that night. He got that entire Alabama love.
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, Coach Linguist, Coach Morgan all saw him. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer can't conduct the in-home visit, which is an interesting, another interesting change to how things are going with coaching stops now. Coach Morgan and Coach Linguist stopped by his house. He tweeted out photos. The entire family was there. I spoke with Zion about that and what it meant to him. And he said it meant a lot for them on the first day out on the road to see him and to send as many coaches as they did, both on offense, defense, having head coach Kalen DeBoer there as well. He feels like the relationship is very strong, especially with Coach Linguist and Coach Morgan. His father is behind his decision to go to Alabama. I remember his father played for Ole Miss, but and didn't push him anywhere throughout his process. But Bama separated themselves on the visits that he took last year, planning to get back for the junior day on February 1st. Look, he also stated that he's going to take some other visits. He's still got, some time left in his recruitment, mentioned some schools that he wants to go out to, maybe take some official visits elsewhere, but he feels really good about his decision. And even more so after this coaching stop on Tuesday, that meant a great deal to him.
Yeah, I think overall, and we mentioned Gunner Rivers, Andrew Bone with the 2027 class. So it wasn't just 2026. And your point earlier was fantastic that they came in. You got to remember, Hugh Freeze spent a year recruiting the 2025 class against Nick Saban. Already, Hugh Freeze is a high-effort recruiting staff. They get after it very well. They work hard. But then you're going against Nick Saban, so you're really working. So they already had that 26, but also we see what they're doing 26. But 27, they also saw a big-time running back at Jackson High School, not just Rivers, but they saw Crowell, who's going to be able to name his school. Maybe his name is NFL team coming out. That's a joke.
Yeah, EJ Crowell. I mean, he's certainly one of the best players in the country, currently ranked number 1 player in Alabama for 27, number 1 running back in the country. So, going out, seeing him already, and he's been to Tuscaloosa several times throughout his recruitment thus far. I mean, it's going to be a really good 27 class, with guys like Jabarius Gar from Viger and Barack Willis from Moody. Both those guys already committed to Alabama. We got a great interview with Gar on BOL today. But yeah, I mean, they were very active the first week on the recruiting trail in the state of Alabama. Now, once the dead period ends again, they'll be back out. They'll be hitting up high schools throughout the entire country, not just within a 5-6 hour radius. But getting out, seeing a lot of the top kids in Alabama was very important in the last week.
Real quick, we got a question from Christian Sykes. I don't think being at 80 or 81 is that big a deal. I mean, I think times have changed so much. We've been dealing a lot with Nick Saban said you want 4 quarterbacks, on roster. It's just hard to have these numbers like they used to be right now. I still think the one thing when you factor in everything is I feel like a lot of people forgot this was a coaching transition year. This is the year up. Have they actually been here a year yet? I don't even know the date, but it's
Coach DeBoer has. Now there's some of the guys on the staff have not, have been here less than a year, but some have been.
Yeah, so I think right now you're looking at 85. I mean, you probably have some guys you want to look at in April and see what pops up. The portal's not as fantastic as people expected it to be this year. We've seen some big names, but a lot of the names were very familiar. So I think there's a way to fill those 85. But I mean, if you're, we mentioned this with the quarterbacks. If you're on your 14 quarterback, you're in a lot of trouble. I don't care who the hell your 14 quarterback is. You're basically, to me, you're running the wishbone with one of your running backs or wide receivers. But let's continue. We talked about in the state of Alabama, Andrew. They also tripped over to Mississippi on Thursday before the snow shut them down, and then we hit the weekend. So they obviously got some of those local guys, Freddie Roach, Robert Gillespie, tagging along with them.
Who's talking?
I was talking to McCoy. I'm sorry. I thought I said Andrew.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Talk about McCoy. Talk about McCoy, Joseph. You can talk about the others.
I don't even know who McCoy is.
McCoy, he just committed. Wait.
Oh,
You,
Jay Raylan?
you know who he is? We talked. Oh my God, you're thinking Mike McCoy. Relax.
I was thinking Mike McCoy.
I know what you're thinking. You're showing your age.
Well, Joseph talked to him the other day. So.
Well, go ahead, Joe. I've got y'all mixed up. Y'all can't tell.
Yeah. So Jeraylin McCoy committed to LSU January 2nd at the Under Armour game. And, what was interesting about that is he had said for several weeks that, his top three was USC, Tennessee, and LSU. Alabama was in there. They were communicating with him. But, he was expected to go to LSU with also the expectation that he would take visits elsewhere after his commitment. When we spoke, he doesn't have anything definitively lined up. But Bama staff did talk with him about that. Freddie Roach saw him at his school, Tupelo High School in Mississippi, a familiar area, familiar school for Bama that they've recruited at in the past. McCoy loves that relationship that he has with Coach DeBoer, with Coach Roach, I should say. He visited last year a couple of times in the spring and for the South Carolina game. He really likes Coach Roach's coaching style. What he brings to the table from a relationship building aspect. And that's kind of where, with these school visits, obviously you want to check in on some of these top guys, just let them know that you're still pursuing them, but also keep that communication going and show them that there's interest and kind of lay the seeds, the foundation for the long game pursuit, because that's what this recruitment is expected to be with McCoy. It's expected to entertain some other schools, visit some other schools, and it's not over just yet with his recruitment.
I know we got a question. Sharpshooters podcast. Andrew, who do you have a must sign? I mean, it's kind of early for that, but is there somebody you would like to sign? I mean, I think we lean in state early. You got a guy that comes to mind for you?
In-state wise, I mean, I really like, a guy like Anthony Jones. I think he's a, really unique athlete. Could play that edge position, could be a bandit down the road. I mean, being number one rated player in the state of Alabama, guy that, early on, I would have felt like, Auburn was, ahead in his recruitment, and they still might be, but I think it's certainly an Alabama-Auburn recruiting battle for Anthony Jones. If you can go in and get the number one player in the state of Alabama this year, I think that would be a huge recruiting win. But position-wise, I think you got to find an offensive tackle and another offensive tackle in this class. I mean, you signed some good players last year, but this is a year you really need to focus and get an elite offensive tackle somewhere.
Again, Joseph, it's early. Do you have a guy you feel like? We hate to say must sign. I've never really known many must signs. And even during Saban's era, everybody said Julio, but they had a great class with or without Julio. His impact was undeniable, obviously. But anybody jumps to mind that you'd like to see that you think could fit in well with this staff?
Yeah, I feel like the description you just had there was good for Ryan Williams, fitting for Ryan Williams in the 2024 class. I think an interesting name for me here is Chris Henry. At a Mater Dei High School, wide receiver committed to Ohio State. I'm interested to see if he actually gets back on campus. But, that would – you talk about Alabama's success at Mater Dei in recent years, what they've done on the West Coast, Kalen DeBoer's offense, and how much of a priority wide receivers are. I think he would just be a massive get from an out-of-state perspective. I won't give another name to him, but that's an interesting name for sure. That interested to see how his commitment with Ohio State plays out.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a guy out of state who we think we need to be paying more attention to. This kind of goes with mine. I think Jared Curtis is somebody I'm just extremely curious about because number one guy in his class, 2026, committed to Georgia. You have to. Part of you has to say it's going to be hard to stock these guys back-to-back classes like you used to see because nobody really wants to wait. Obviously, Keelan Russell's going to carry a big name, but I think Jared Curtis's interest is more than just passing. I mean, coming February 1st on the barbecue, staff's going to see him probably next week. He's a guy hard to get, with Keelan Russell there, but I think his interest is more than just, it might have started as a curiosity, but I feel like it's deeper. Andrew, who's yours? I know you have a defensive back you like from out of state.
Yeah, I'm looking at a guy like Jordan Edmonds over at Sprayberry High School in Marietta. That's a guy that has had Alabama very high on his list for a while. I think we talked to him back in September, October, and mentioned Alabama as his leader, and nothing has changed there. I think this is a year where we're going to see more defensive backs in the class from the high school ranks, and they already have one in Gibson, but they certainly have they're going to have Edmonds on campus February the 1st. That's a guy that I think that could potentially go ahead and make an early decision with Alabama in the lead. And, I think he only has a top 3 or top 4 right now. So they could make him feel pretty good here in a few weeks. We could see potentially a second defensive back on the commitment list pretty early.
Joseph, there's a guy you like. Just did an interview with him recently, I think, Lamar Brown. Tell us why you like him, an out-of-state guy you're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, Lamar Brown out of Louisiana. Jamarcus Shepard paid him a visit last week. I think it was really interesting. We were keeping tabs on who they were actually seeing, what schools they were stopping by, even though it was mainly regional. Corey Morgan did go out to California. It was mainly, regional for the most part. We were interested in seeing which schools they would go out to, which guys they would see. And Lamar Brown was what was an interesting one for sure. He hasn't visited Alabama during the Kalen DeBoer era. Visited a couple of times when Coach Saban was there, but he does have high interest in the Crimson Tide. Back in November, he put them in his top 6. His recruitment's a little bit more open now outside of those 6 finalists, but Bama's the school that he's looking at. February 1st, the junior day, which is the day of the basketball game against Georgia. That's one that he's looking to return to, if not for the spring. Bama's actually, he says that Bama's recruiting him on both sides of the ball. He's the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country, a top 15 overall recruit, but he speaks with both Freddie Roach and Coach Cap. Just this is another one, as I mentioned with Henry, just waiting to see, get him on campus, go from there. Then you get to official visit talk. But this staff has proven they can recruit the offensive line well. Signed a really good class last year.
We hear this from Michael, shocked that anyone gets excited about recruiting when players can leave after 1 year. They've always been able to leave after 1 year. This isn't new. Alvin Kamara, how long was he at Alabama? Did he ever play? This isn't new, but why do I get excited? Ryan Williams, Jalen Mbakwe, Zay Mincy, Xavier Brown. Those are 2 freshman All-Americans. And that's, and there are going to be some, you got to remember there's guys that signed with Saban. And it's natural in a coaching search when you're there for a coach and he leaves to possibly look around. But I'm still excited. And another thing I'm excited about is they're playing these freshmen now. You're paying them. They can leave after a year. You're throwing their butt out there for a couple of reasons. One, you want to see if they're worth the money you're paying them. And if they're not, it's going to be a mutual parting between the two. So this isn't just the players leaving. This is players being told there's probably, and this is for every college, probably being told there's better avenues for them somewhere else. Andrew Bone, give us a position group. You don't have to give us the players, but one, you did 2 good stories. Again, on BamaOnLine.com for you guys that aren't members. We got the trial. We always got some kind of trial membership to check us out. We have the roundtable message board. I promise you, we're discussing everything from pellet grills to the NFL draft to Andrew's hat right now. But your guys are more than welcome to join. And also do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't yet. We appreciate y'all being here. But Andrew, give us a position. You did a great job. You got 2 stories, 3 on the offensive side, 3 on the defensive side that you feel like the focus are. Pick a position and let's talk about where you think the focus is.
Well, I think quarterback's got to be an area that is going to have a lot of attention this year just because, you just signed Keelan Russell. You feel really good about the future there with him, but he's also just coming in as a true freshman. You also only have 2 other scholarship quarterbacks on your team heading into the spring, so 3 total. So let's say Ty Simpson goes out there and completely balls out, has a great redshirt junior season this upcoming season, and decides to leave early. That leaves you with what? two scholarship quarterbacks. So you got to go out there. You've got to sign a quarterback. Is it going to be an elite guy? That's going to be very tough. But Jerry Curtis, as you mentioned earlier, is a guy that really likes Alabama. There's some other guys that are out there. We're going to see more guys kind of emerge throughout the course of the next few months. We weren't talking about Keelan Russell this time last year. There's going to be more guys that they're going to go out there. They're going to see that they're going to have on campus, probably guys that are committed elsewhere that we're not talking about at all right now, that are going to end up sneaking into Tuscaloosa during the spring, potentially for an official visit. But yeah, I mean, I think they would certainly love to add another elite quarterback in this class. Even though they signed Keelan Russell, they're not going to slow down on trying to sign the best quarterback they possibly can in just about every single recruiting cycle.
And I think the staff does an exceptional job of evaluating. I think they evaluate everything really well. But the quarterback position last year, I mean, when the staff got here and we looked at the people signed, we were kind of like, holy crap, everybody's committed, not signed. They've got to go dig one out. But they took their time. I mean, there was a lot of offer Deuce McKnights. There was a lot of pay Juju what he wants. You know what I mean? Everybody's always saying write him a blank check, but it's never their check that's blank. It's always somebody else's, by the way. But I think they dug in and did, came out the best with that. But it was a long evaluation process. Nick Sheridan was on the road, went and saw a bunch of guys, kid committed to TCU, North Carolina, and some other ones before, making that offer and then that full court press. Joseph, give us a position.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the offensive line group. Even though Bama signed a really good group, like I mentioned, Jackson Lloyd, Michael Carroll, Michael DeBose, Mal Waldrop last December, bought in some additions via the portal. They'd also had some departures and, guys going to the NFL, guys going elsewhere. So, I'm really interested in seeing how things play out with a full year of Coach Cap. On the staff, Coach Morgan, that tandem there is exceptional. Of Courtney having played, a couple of decades ago, that carries weight when he's out there on the road recruiting these offensive linemen. You got Jackson Cantwell, Emmanuel Acho, top two offensive tackles in the country. Both visited Alabama multiple times last year, including for a game day. Expected to return, sometime this year, whether that be in the spring or for an official visit. You've got the interior offensive lineman, Lamar Brown, like we mentioned before. PJ Dean is one who's expressed high interest in the Crimson Tide. They just offered a top 60 overall prospect, and Bryson Martinez out of Louisiana. So, that's definitely a position group we're interested in seeing play out and how Bama can build upon what they did last year.
Need to pause for Kenneth Cannon's dropping life knowledge that everyone needs. Because I'm still pissed. Herb changed his number with all the Saints Pelicans gear. Herb Jones changed his number out of the blue, just out of the blue, so you can't really trust anybody. So Bama jerseys, I tell you, if you get 1 to 9, no name, it's going to be a pretty good player, right? Because everybody wants a single digit. Am I right, Kenneth? And everybody 1 to 9 gets to choose those numbers, the best players, because everybody wants them. And they all play two ways, right? So you got like a great chance. You just pick 1 through 9, Kenneth, but that's world advice. I appreciate it. My position's defensive lineman. I hate to give that to Alabama fans because they scream it nonstop. But I agree. I think defensive lineman, and also base that on how hard they've went after them so far. I mean, they've been very active. Edge guys that are going to grow. They look, going to end up, that bandit position leaves a lot of flexibility. We were asked about Cam Harrion Johnson. I'm probably butchering. His mom's probably
I think you got it right.
Yeah, I was pretty sure mom's going to be mad at me. But from Muscle Shoals, got an offer. One of those guys that obviously stands out the minute you flip on the tape. Very interesting. Freddie Roach offered him. He's from that neck of the woods. The whole Roach, all the Roach boys played football up there. And another one I was excited about when I watched him was Tyson Bacon. Committed to Tennessee. I think there was talk he wanted to be an edge, but that body's just not going to hold that edge, I don't think. I mean, best case scenario, could easily grow into a defensive tackle. So I think the defensive line will be a priority this year. You're going to lose some guys next year. Kelby's probably, gone. You're probably going to lose you're losing Tim Keenan, you're losing Overton. So you're losing some experienced guys. Got some young guys you like that still have to show up, but continue going. Andrew Bone, what are your thoughts where we're at? I mean, it's been kind of I mean, not to feel like crybabies because we work from home in our underwear eating Fruity Pebbles, but it's been a hard year for us. It's been a long year for covering this beat, man.
I don't know what you do at your house, but that's not my house.
That's definitely Andrew's house. The minute his wife leaves, the pants come off. I don't know why we're kidding right now. He might not have on pants right now, if we're being honest.
No, as far as recruiting and team, I mean, nothing ever slows down. Everybody says, "Oh, what are you going to do now that the recruiting cycle is over?" Or, signing days passed. There's never any slowdown time. You're always constantly, what's next? Alabama coaches are out on the road recruiting. They're evaluating kids. You start finding out who are going to be your top guys. By April, by May, when official visits start in June, who all those top end guys are. They're finding those guys right now. We're talking about them. We're evaluating, or we're writing about them and stuff like that. So there's a lot that's going on BOL, and obviously a lot of stuff going on with the basketball team. And hey, we even got threads about gymnastics on BOL. So a lot happening over the course of the next few months.
That's how I read on the roundtables. How I found out Bama had a good basketball team, women's. I just looked up and they were like 18th in the country. Jay Barker's daughter's a really good player. It's hard to keep up with all the sports with us covering the recruiting and everything. But Joseph, your thoughts, the year, kind of at the take a breath stage. I mean, you get a little bit before we get going on 2026. And I feel like we're focused because we know exactly. Of course, there's the Grubb news sitting out there that won't go away. He's Ryan Grubb is, no longer employed with Seattle. He's extremely close with Kalen DeBoer. We're watching that closely. But, Joseph, overall, your thoughts. Give us a final thought.
It's just interesting, especially this time of year, how narratives, it goes up and down and up and down. So the narrative was Ike Taylor was never going to stick with Alabama, right? Like, he committed to Alabama, but, he was going to Ole Miss. He was, don't recruit the state of Mississippi, all that. Yeah, Ike Taylor ends up signing with Alabama. Then we get to the 2026 class, and Alabama pays some visits this past week to the Magnolia State, and you get Tristan Keys, 5-star wide receiver. You get Jaraylin McCoy, who we mentioned. You get Nolan Wilson, a top 60 overall player on 3, and then it goes right back to it. The narrative about Mississippi recruiting. So I think it's funny how it fluctuates. Same thing with the portal as well. A lot of narratives. One week it's hot, the next week we don't talk about it anymore. Especially when your school silences that narrative. So yeah, it's just funny this time of year seeing how those narratives change. But yeah, like Bowen had mentioned, it's just we're gonna be waiting to see with the evaluation phase that Bama's in right now, the kids that they go out and see, the new offers that are extended, who's expressing high interest in Alabama right now. I know it may seem like early, but, last year I went to Battle Miami and saw Deshaun Lee, and he said Bama's in his top 3, immediately had high interest. He ends up in Alabama's class. Spoke with a couple other guys there that had expressed high interest in Alabama and took visits. So, may seem like early, and people don't want to get disinvested, especially with how hectic recruiting can be. But, these are the visits that matter, and these are the offers that matter.
Yeah, Joseph's too young for you older guys and gals who are following on the show to know about Mississippi 10 years ago. So, Joseph, we get where it's coming from because, people talk about the Midnight Rider in Mississippi for a reason. But I think that's changed because now the NIL is the noon rider. Everybody's got the NIL and can do those things. Your point is valid with A.K. Deere. People say, oh, you don't sign a Mississippi kid because he's going to decommit. How many kids in Alabama decommitted from Alabama last year? I mean, I feel like you can't say recruit Alabama and they decommitted. So really, you're just the individual is who you're dealing with in that situation. Joseph talking about the room, the subject's wild for a while. My favorite subject this whole year, I think, is Peter Woods. P-woo. My boy made one tweet thanking the Clemson fans, and all hell broke loose. And it's a given. I mean, Alabama fans want him. Kelby Collins just circled back. So, I mean, I think we all could understand that. But that was a good one because that was a heated one for a while, and then it was just gone. Poof, it was gone. Anyways, thanks everyone who turned into the show, the ones that watch it later, the ones who turned in live. Y'all are probably in trouble with your bosses or your wives. I feel like y'all probably should have been doing something at this moment, just like we should have. But thanks for joining. We appreciate y'all being here. Give us a thumbs up and like. We enjoy doing the show. We had one of the guys say we need to do it more often, and we plan to. It's just a busy, busy year this year. We're going to jump in and do more live stuff. We know y'all want to see us more. Y'all need the visual, the sound, and the message ain't enough. You need the visual.
I don't think people realize they can talk to us every single day, all day long, on the BOL roundtable. So
it's true, all day long.
BamaOnLine.com. Go to BOL. You don't have to wait a week to see us. You can come talk to us. You got a burning question. If you just want to talk about really anything, it's not just Alabama football. We talk about pretty much everything on BOL, but come check us out, BamaOnLine.com. But if not, we'll see you on here soon, and thank you all for watching the show again.
See, 10 toes down, he gets us. This is the love we need right here. This is the love we need. Thank you. That made our week. Joseph Hastings, give us a final thought or say goodbye.
Yeah, just want to thank you all for tuning in on this surprise live show. We're glad to have the interactions that we have, the great questions, the great comments. We see all of them, and we're excited to run this back again.
And by surprise live, we were not supposed to go live. We did not know we were live until I saw a question from EXE.1 who just made a comment. I thought Joseph sent us a message, and he let us know we're live. So good looking out from him, because the Lord knows what we would have said otherwise. So thank you all for
we've been
I was texting Bo like, we're live. Don't take your hoodie off again. All right, we appreciate we appreciate everybody for turning in. Roll Tide, and we'll see you soon. In fact, we have a basketball podcast coming Thursday. Charlie Potter and Blake Byler. SEC basketball is rocking and rolling. Bama had a couple of good games. They got a big game tonight with Ole Miss. I believe they're undefeated, rolling into Tuscaloosa. So appreciate seeing you, and also look forward to seeing you on BamaOnLine and the Roundtable. Thank you.